Welcome to the Loaded Goat. I'm Aaron.
And I'm Chris.
And we are doing the Rehabilitation of Otis, a episode that really takes a hard-hitting look at alcoholism and what it does to people.
I don't know. So I watched this on a flight yesterday.
Okay.
I enjoyed it more than I have some other episodes that I really got bored with. And you had mentioned maybe you think this is teetering on mediocrity. I like seeing him riding a cow, and maybe that's all I need. But I enjoyed some parts.
Well, you raise a good point about the cow. I think part of the problem with I don't have any real problems with this episode. This episode is fine. I just don't really find
this episode is brought to you by
people who ride cows.
Yeah.
I don't really have any issue with it one way or the other. I don't think it's a very memorable episode. I just think it's not really a classic by any stretch of the imagination.
Nope. But you know what, listener? Don't be discouraged. This episode of The Loaded Goat is going to be a classic. We already have two things going for us. Aaron isn't sick. I don't have a numb face from Novocaine. And I'm feeling chatty today, too. So buckle up, bub. We're about to get started on The Loaded Goat. Jamie, I hope you're listening. This is going to be a good one.
Are you, so do you want to drive the episode, or do I still need to do that?
Yeah. The show opens with a father and a son walking down a creek path, okay? One of the kids stops. The kid stops. I think he trips because he does not wear his shoes. Throws a rock into a water reservoir for the city of Los Angeles, City of Angels. We then cut to some whistling and some speaking, talking about saying it's welcome to the Andy Griffith Show. And then we move forward into the epilogue. And we make light of alcoholism. That's the show. How many
Thanks for listening. I think we should probably add a little more detail.
Okay, cool.
Right, so
whatever you want to add. I just did my homework and I wanted to show it off.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. That's a great job breaking down the intro of the series. We open with Barney reading. Well, first of all, this episode first aired on January 18th, 1965. We open with Barney reading and commenting how the magazine he is reading is amazing. It's about he gets a magazine where he can learn something once a month, and it focuses on individual issues. And so what he's finding out this month is that the size of a horse's eyes at birth are the same when the horse is fully grown.
That's kind of fun. I also learned that in this instance.
I'm happy for you. I didn't know that either, but it does make sense.
Mm-hmm. That's what they call him, the bulgy-eyed Buckeye.
That's not what they don't call him that at all.
Got it. Noted.
They hear some clanking outside and they go to check on it. And it's just drunken Otis riding a cow through town. Which is just, that's good TV.
This raised an important question for me related to the other episodes, okay? We only ever see Otis walk, once he comes into the jail. We rarely ever see him come, how he gets to the building. And maybe for all these years he's been riding a cow and we just don't know.
Would you like to think that?
I do. And maybe he watched Napoleon Dynamite, saw the more cowbell thing, so he added a cowbell to the cow. That's why we're hearing it.
What cow in Napoleon Dynamite had a cowbell?
There wasn't a cow. I thought they used to yell more cowbell, or was that Blades of Glory or something? That
was Saturday Night Live, where they were recording Don't Fear the Reaper, and Christopher Walken was playing Blue Oyster Cult, and Christopher Walken is saying, "I need more cowbell," and Will Ferrell's playing the cowbell.
I don't know where these wires got crossed in my head.
Got your finger on the pulse. So Otis thinks he's bought a horse, and Andy takes Otis into the jail to sleep it off, and Barney goes to tie the cow up out back. When Otis is in the bed, Barney comes in and says he needs professional help. Does Otis need professional help?
Yes.
Otis needs to go
away at Betty Ford.
I think Otis needs longer than a weekend away. I wonder if I do wonder what the options were back then. mean,
They're very little. I think, there's still no access to mental health or substance use reforms right now. Let's get into the ghost networks that all these insurance companies are putting out. You never know. You never know what people are able to provide and are able to receive, especially in a small rural community. There aren't a lot of access to providers that are able to do these things. Certainly not at that time. You'd have to go over to Raleigh. And even then, there would probably a shortage of beds and skill sets to be able to take care of these issues.
do you think Mayberry or Mount Pilot has a chapter of Alcoholics Anonymous at this point?
Thank you for asking. I do, but I think it's very under the radar. Like in what is it? Season 1 of House of Cards, when Doug Stamper, the chief of staff, they find out that he's now he comes, I think, reconciles with his alcoholism, and he's put forward with another, walks into a meeting. Maybe this is the West Wing.
It's House of Cards. He
walks in. There's the Illuminati AA where people meet, and it's secretaries, things like that.
Yeah, so it's because that congressman has to go, and so they go to the secretive AA where everybody kind of says, well, if you rat on me, I can rat on you.
Yeah, exactly. That's what Mayberry has.
So I don't think it's do you think it's but I don't think it's a bunch of bigwigs. Do you think it's just a bunch of people keeping?
I think it's the Oddfellows. I think it's the Illuminati. I think it's the Clintons.
In Mayberry?
Yeah.
I'm glad
this goes all the way to the top, Aaron.
With the top, Mayor Stoner?
yeah, Mayor Stoner.
Can you imagine Mayor Stoner as your AA sponsor? You're not gonna last. You're gonna be back drinking before it's all said and done. I don't even know why we even gave you a chip.
I like it.
Yeah. Well, but they don't have AA in Mayberry. They've got Barney Fife. And Barney is ready because the issue of the magazine he read the last month is on psychology. And it was full of tests that any layman can give. And Andy is hesitant, but he knows Barney is going to do it anyway. And so they look at Otis sleeping, and Barney thinks he spotted the child within syndrome, which is actually was probably fairly cutting edge in 1965, and says there's a tortured soul inside saying, help me. And then Barney says, just imagine the tormented thoughts going through that mind. And Otis then lets out a laugh in his sleep, and Andy just goes, well, he's whatever it is, he's having a good time.
I don't know, Aaron. I've personally never been drunk in my life, but I would imagine that when someone does get drunk, they don't have a lot of thoughts going through their mind. They're kind of some brief little glimpses of things, but not fully formed child stuck in an adult's body. At least in my understanding of your experience.
My experience do I talk to you all the time about getting drunk? Is that what you've heard? Throwing this on me? Yeah. No, I would have to imagine. I think the question is Otis, does Otis always have alcohol in his system? Because if Otis has alcohol always in his system, he probably has some real mental issues. Yeah, but he doesn't seem like he does.
No, I don't think so.
Because he seems like he only gets drunk really drunk a few times a week.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the next day, Barney is sitting next to Otis and wakes him up, and he tells Otis he needs help. And Otis agrees to let Barney do some tests. And he starts off with a Rorschach test, and Otis thinks it's a bat. And Barney gets mad and tells him it's a butterfly. And Barney and Otis get into it, and Andy comes in and breaks it up. And Otis leaves, but Barney gives him his home phone number and tells him to call him anytime he gets the urge to drink, which is basically what an AA sponsor would do as well.
Yep.
And then Andy looks at the Rorschach test and says it looks like a bat.
What did you see? Did you see your mother or something like that?
No, there is just mother. I didn't. I think it was so fast. I think I saw a butterfly. It makes me think of this movie. Did you ever see Problem Child?
No, lived it.
Pretty bad movie, but Michael Richards plays this like some sort of boomerang bow tie killer or something like that. He's in prison and he's corresponding, but he breaks out because he's doing a Rorschach test with the psychiatrist. And he keeps saying, well, I just see flowers. And the warden goes, no, he doesn't. He sees blood. He sees all of these things. And finally, the psychiatrist kicks the warden out. And then he looks at Michael Richards. He goes, okay, so what do you see? And Michael Richards goes, I see blood. And he charges the guy and then breaks out of jail.
Oh, cool.
Oh, yeah, it's Kramer. A great
Kramer
movie.
On the move.
Yes. It's pre-Seinfeld, so it's really one of the more obnoxious movies I've ever seen, as far as just the movie does not really have any redeeming qualities whatsoever.
Got it.
But that night, Barney gets a call from Otis that wakes him up, and he's got the urge to drink, and Barney tells him to wait right there. Listening in, he sounded sober in the audio that was coming through. Didn't you think so?
Yeah, but I think that's just a filter Sarah puts on. It's like it's like augmented reality. You look at an Instagram photo, it smooths that up. Like, look at me on Zoom. I got so many beautifying filters on this thing. Just flattens and mats and makes me look all dewy. That's not real life. You saw me this weekend.
No, you look like a man who's been rode hard and put up wet. And so that night, so Andy's going to go to bed, but Barney calls and asks for his help. And Andy and Barney pull up to a house party at the Johnson place, and out comes Otis from behind the house on his cow. And apparently Barney didn't make it clear to Otis that he should call before he drinks. And Barney is mad, and he handcuffs an angry Otis and takes him in as we go to commercial.
It's a little rough here.
It's a little rough. And after the break, Andy looks over at sleeping Otis and says Barney was too rough. And Barney says this is his way of getting Otis to submit. And Otis wakes up and he's really mad, says he's not coming back to the jail ever.
That really makes you think. They almost had full reform. But wait. I like this episode. I think it was kind of a fun one. I don't know, man.
And Andy and Barney stop by Floyd's, who, maybe the best scene in the whole series, who says that Otis told him he's leaving town, and apparently he got a double shave. And in a bit of great Floyd, he keeps going over all the places he might have gone, and then finally just remembers that Otis said he was going to Mount Pilot. And Andy gets off the phone with the sheriff, who said that Otis was going to throw all of his business to them going forward, and they go to visit him. And in Mount Pilot, Otis is sitting
all of
with
his
Luke.
Business.
Yeah. I mean, he's gonna, it's a lucrative business, housing drunks.
It is.
And Otis is sitting with Luke, who's another drunk, and they're talking about great jails. And Luke's actually played by Frank Cady.
No kidding.
You don't even know who Frank Cady is.
I don't.
But I'll remind you, he played the town drunk Will Hoople in The Backdoor Pilot.
Oh, The Backdoor Pilot. The classic joke I do on every single episode that we mentioned it in season 1 of The Loaded Goat. Streaming now on any podcast service near you. We're grateful for thousands of listeners.
We are. And Andy and Barney come in and ask Otis to come back to Mayberry, and they promise him no more psychology. Otis says he doesn't know if he wants to come back, but Luke pulls him aside and says he could get something out of it, like breakfast in bed. But Otis says he already gets breakfast in bed. Otis has got it pretty good.
Yeah, you realize it. Sometimes it takes leaving to know what you had.
And then Otis says he doesn't know, and he needs to think about it. And Andy's just finally had it at this point. He tells Otis to do whatever he wants, and then he leaves. And back at the jail, Barney is very dejected and says he really misses Otis. And Barney gets his robe, and they think they might ship it to Mount Pilot. That's how dramatic this is. Although Otis does have a wife, and he does live in Mayberry, so they could just ship it to Otis's house.
Well, this is something we talked about sometimes Mount Pilot is 4 hours away. Sometimes it's just around the river bend,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And Barney starts to get emotional. And then they hear a clank. and they open the door and in rides Otis on his cow as we go to commercial.
A beautiful full circle lesson learned.
This episode was produced by Pod Machine. They do a great podcast and a great rig. I was fortunate to get started on this a few years ago, and I've just been very, very pleased with it ever since. I mean, they will edit your podcast. They will do artwork for your podcast. They'll do the YouTube videos for the podcast, and they have a very quick turnaround time once you upload all your material. So I highly recommend it.
I'm pro pod in general. I love bean pods. I like pod hotels. I like pod apples, maybe. But you know what pods I like best? Pod machines.
Pod machines. Me too.
I like them better than podcasts. I honestly don't even really like podcasts that much. So I'm just thankful that you're here.
Why do you do this podcast?
To see your dimples, baby.
To see my dimples. Well, and if you really push hard podcast, my Pod Machine might be able to give you some dimples. I don't know. So go to podmachine.com to learn more and enter Loaded Goat at checkout for a 10% discount.
And that's spelled just like Loaded Goat.
And in the epilogue, Otis is asleep, and in comes Luke wanting to turn himself in. And he's also brought every drunk over from Mount Pilot who thinks they're going to go live high on the hog as we close.
Good for business.
Good for business, yeah. So that's the episode.
Did my positivity make you like it a little bit more?
I liked it just fine. I said mediocre as we started. I think like when I say mediocre, that's really for this is like a 5 or 6 episy episode for me.
Okay.
On Whistles.
All right. I guess we're jumping ahead. We're jumping ahead.
No, it's not terrible. I'm just telling you. That's when I say a I say mediocre. I just mean mid-level, and I feel like for episodes, this is just kind of a mid-level episode.
Run of the mill.
Run of the mill.
What does that mean? I don't know. That's something I'm going to research. I'm going to come back, give you the old Christy the wordsmith.
Yeah, I won't hold my breath.
Dictionary.
I won't hold my breath on that.
Okay.
But how many whistles would you give this?
I'm giving it a 6.
Okay. I'll give it a 6.
Okay. Look at us.
Look at us.
2 6s on the screen.
Yeah. So, but any final thoughts? Anything?
No cows were harmed in the making of this episode, obviously. I like to think that there were several cows because Otis doesn't have a cow. He just finds a cow. That's what he drinks, and then he goes and he gets a cow, and then he takes it in. So that could be a way also that they could have added a little bit more color to this episode, is like maybe he's rustling cattle. That could be kind of fun. But other than that, I think, you're building on a productive storyline that we've had throughout, and you do it in a new way. So I'm okay with it.
There you go. All right. Well, thanks for your thoughts. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. And if you think about it, subscribe. Next week, we'll do the lucky letter. Until then, Christopher, just imagine the tormented thoughts that go through that mind.
Oh, you never even tell people just to send us cash in the mail.